Lulisona, president of HAG. It's bad enough that the Sega Genesis has the most 16-bit games out there, but this new Sonic the Hedgehog guy, ooh, he really grinds my gears. They say he's incredibly fast. Well, what's the hurry, mister? And about that attitude, smarty pants, why can't he be like that nice boy Mario?
Hey!
What the
Well, if you couldn't tell from the Unleashed and Colors videos, I'm doing a mainline Sonic retrospective, baby! We all love Sonic, right? I'm assuming you guys do. For this video, we're gonna be tackling all 4 Genesis-era Sonic games, and then part 2 is gonna handle Mania and Superstars, I guess. Well, this is it, guys. The games that started it all. The foundation where one of my favorite franchises ever sits on. The classic Sonic games. I don't think I need to go over Sonic's inception since it's already common knowledge, but I still kinda wanna since I think it's important. To combat Nintendo in the early 90s, Sega decided to make a mascot who could compete with Mario. So they held a character design contest with this sketch by Naoto Oshima winning. So all they had to do was make him blue to complement the Sega logo, give him Michael Jackson boots with Santa Claus's color scheme, and bam, one of the most iconic character designs ever was created. For his personality, Sonic's always been a pretty straightforward character. He stands for freedom and he won't stand idly by when someone threatens it. He's also incredibly determined and cocky, 2 traits that are portrayed perfectly with just the sprite work in this game alone. Just with that title screen, you can tell Sonic is a cocky bitch. Hell, Sonic was the one who popularized idle animations. It's common knowledge at this point, but it's a great way to display his impatience by having him tap his foot while breaking the 4th wall. But we're getting too ahead of ourselves. Now that Sonic himself has been discussed, we can finally move on to the game that started it all, Sonic the Hedgehog. Now for this game, I'll be using the fan-made PC port Sonic 1 Forever. I know it's not exactly the most authentic experience out there, but it's by far the definitive way to play Sonic 1. Widescreen, numerous bug fixes, and a bunch of other cool enhancements are here. I'm gonna try to play as many of these fan-made ports for this video as much as possible, but you'll see one of them has an exception, which we'll get to later. Anyway, the game immediately starts us off at the first act, so let's talk about the gameplay. Sonic 1 introduces the, for lack of a better word, gimmick this series has that differentiates it from other platformers. Sonic is a speedy little boy. The best Sonic games have a great platforming and speed relationship, which varies from game to game. For the classics, it's all about handling momentum to build up speed. While the sequels handle this element better, I think Sonic 1 mostly does a good job at this design philosophy. Future criminal Yuji Naka had 2 main inspirations for Sonic 1, those being the thrill of roller coasters and how fun Super Mario Bros. Can be when you're speedrunning it. And you can see both elements at play in the best levels of this game. There's plenty of speedy sections, but there's little bits of platforming to provide a nice pace breaker. Some levels like Marble Zone and Labyrinth Zone are this game's idea of pace breaker levels that are 99% platforming and no speed at all. And as you can imagine, they suck doo-doo. As you might have already noticed, I turned on the Spin Dash, a move introduced in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Can you really blame me? This game would be a lot less bearable without it. Anyway, all the other gameplay tidbits are pretty standard Sonic stuff by now, but again, it's great to differentiate Sonic from other platformers. For one, Sonic curls into a ball when jumping as well as while pressing down when running. Sonic's ball state is how we destroy badniks. Without it, he's vulnerable unless you grab a shield or invincibility monitor, which leads me to the ring system. Rings are a currency that act as Sonic's health. Upon taking damage, rings fly out of you, so as long as you just have one, you're safe from dying. The game rewards you for keeping these rings, since beating an act with 50 or more of them lets you hop into a big old ring leading into a special stage to collect the 7 Chaos. Whoa, what do you mean there's 6 of them here? Anyway, these special stages suck ass. You're plopped into a constantly rotating stage where all you can do is jump around while avoiding annoying bumpers and shit. You're also gonna want to get on your knees and pray that you don't fall into the goal spheres, because I guess whoever named these did so on opposite day. The last obstacle are these blocks that disappear if you stand on them for long enough, so you need to awkwardly balance yourself on these until you reach the emerald inside. Now, special stages have always been hit or miss for me. Some later on are pretty fun, but others I really don't don't vibe with, and unfortunately Sonic 1 is the latter. I don't know how I managed to grab all 6 emeralds during this playthrough, I guess I just got lucky. Getting back into the game, I think the presentation is great. This game has its own style, and it's aged like a fine wine. Little things like the iconic sound design and Sonic sprites are all baked into our brains at this point, so I don't need to tell you that it's all, well, iconic. And while it does look simplistic compared to the sequels, I think they did a good job at making each level visually unique. The levels stick to the central theme of nature versus technology, starting out in the grassy plains of Green Hill Zone, before slowly introducing more tech-based levels and ending in the industrial nightmare of Scrap Brain Zone. I love when Sonic games have a theme to their levels, like Unleashed levels being based on IRL locations, and Colors having the whole theme park thing, even Lost World's theme of being a pale imitation of Super Mario 3D World. And of course, you can't talk about any Sonic game without mentioning the music. The series has had a bunch of cracked musicians lend their talents to it, each adding something spicy to Sonic's musical legacy, and it all starts here with Masato Nakamura from the band Dreams Come True. I think every track in this game is amazing. You have stuff like the title theme, which is one of my favorite theme songs for Sonic. It just has its own cocky and proud energy. And of course, Green Hill has good music. It's one of the most iconic themes in all of gaming. It's right up there with the Mario and Zelda themes, Wily's Castle from Mega Man, and the Area Clear theme from Luigi's Mansion 3. This song sounds a little familiar. Now, this is probably common knowledge as well, but I think it's neat that Nakamura-san came up with these songs just by looking at screenshots of the levels, and if you ask me, they all fit the vibe perfectly, especially Green Hill Zone. Now, I've talked about Green Hill, Marble, and Labyrinth Zone, so let's just blaze through the rest of the levels. Up next is Spring Yard Zone, I think this is a construction site? I'm not really sure. Anyway, this level is another solid entry, and it's a great way to showcase Sonic's pinball-esque momentum with plenty of hills and slopes to slide down. And it does have a couple of platforming segments involving these shifty staircases and these big spiky balls. Unfortunately, there were some instances of unfair bullshit happening, like this instance where a buzz bomber decided it would be hilarious if it shot me in the face, but other than that, one of the better levels, honestly. And the music is pretty simple, but it's one of the best tracks in the whole game. Up next is Starlight Zone, another speedy level taking place in a city under the night sky. There's some segments that slow down so we can play around with this seesaw mechanic, and I think the boss in this area makes great use of these things. There's not much to say for this level other than the annoying bomb badniks and of course the calming music. And the last level is Scrap Brain Zone, the first ever Eggman base. Amazing final levels in a Sonic game are a dime a dozen, and I think they nailed everything here, aesthetic-wise. You can tell this is the dangerous evil villain lair, with the color palette consisting of the reddish-brown background with that city covered in a cloud of pollution, and the foreground's metallic, laboratory-esque design is also really neat. The music really fits the technological, foreboding tone, and I like the small bit where it sounds kinda otherworldly. but the level itself kinda sucks, sorry. I get that it's the last level and it's supposed to be hard, but it's less natural difficulty and more stupidly tedious platforming and bullshit obstacles. They straight up just give up with Act 3 since it's just a recolor of Labyrinth Zone, but afterwards we go fight the final boss, and when it comes to boss fights, it's all just Eggman dicking around in his Eggmobile with a new gimmick each time. You just gotta jump on him 8 times, and the same goes for all the other bosses in the classic era, so I'll be ignoring them except for some I deem noteworthy. The only ones that stand out here are the first one with the iconic Wrecking Ball, the Starlight Zone one, and the final boss where he tries to squish you in this locked room. Overall, there's nothing amazing, but they're serviceable, I guess. Also, I'm a Dr. Eggman truther. Get that Robotnik shit out of here. And that was Sonic 1. If you have all the Chaos Emeralds, the reward is pissing Eggman off after the credits, and Sonic just adds a bunch of flowers to Green Hill Zone before trying to poke you in the eye. Overall, it's still a pretty solid game, and still one of the most influential games of all time, despite its shortcomings. It set the groundwork for the rest of the series, and the imperfections have been ironed out in the other classics. I do think the best way to play this game is Sonic 1 Absolute, even if it's not exactly the most authentic experience, but I'm sure all of you know that already, unless you're a Sonic fan who isn't a PC gamer, and if so, my condolences, but whatever. This was a fun little adventure, but now it's time to move on. But first, I want to do something different. For this retrospective, I want to add each game on a tier list. If you're curious, Unleashed is in A tier and Colors is in C tier. But for Sonic 1, while it's not the best, it's again very solid, and it's pretty replayable. So it only makes sense for it to go to the B tier. Now, timeline-wise, up next is Sonic CD, released for the short-lived Genesis add-on in 1993. Now, I actually talked about Sonic CD on this channel before, and that video is really old and really cringe, so a re-review was long overdue. Thankfully, instead of painstakingly transferring 30-second clips of gameplay from Sonic Origins on my Nintendo Switch 1 to my phone, to Discord, to Microsoft Clipchamp, I'll just directly record Sonic Origins on my PC. I had to spend $30 on this mediocre-ass collection. Now, I'm sure you all remember the embarrassing pre-launch shenanigans with this game, from the weird periodic table of pre-order bonuses, the delisting of Genesis Sonic games on PC to make room for Origins, and the amount of issues present within the collection itself. Like, come on, they removed Sonic's voice lines from CD and they butchered the music for Sonic 3. But regardless, I think this collection has a little bit of charm. Not as much as Mega Collection, but you know, nothing beats Mega Collection. The main menu islands are nice, and there's 2D animated cutscenes to bookend each game, which is always a plus. These cutscenes have the same art style as the Sonic Frontiers prologue, with anime-inspired movement and shading, and the backgrounds looking like they were hand-painted, and I love them. I really wish we could get a full animated series with this style. Speaking of the cutscenes, I think it's neat that they made Sonic have a vision of the 7th Chaos Emerald during Sonic 1's good ending, which is why he races off to West Side Island for Sonic 2. I guess Sonic CD was just kind of a detour. Meanwhile, Amy is playing around with her tarot cards foreshadowing Sonic's arrival to Never Lake, and Little Planet suddenly shows up afterwards. It hovers over Never Lake once a year, and it's believed to have mystical properties, which is why Eggman chains the whole thing up, as we'll see later. Soon after, oh my god, the music is really loud! We cut to the remastered 4x3 intro from the original, animated by Studio Junio and produced by Toei Animation. This opening is almost on the same level as the Sonic Unleashed opening for me. It's a short but beautiful animated scene of Sonic running around and being a badass before he notices Little Planet under Eggman's control, so he zooms off to save the day. There's some really neat details to appreciate here. Sonic's sheer power and speed is showcased by him running across rivers fast enough to launch water in the air to create a rainbow, and by spin jumping into falling rocks to crack them like eggs. And I really like how Sonic looks in this intro. This specific design for Sonic was reused in future titles like Sonic Mania, but he looks the best here, there's no denying that. The last thing to appreciate is the song playing in the background, You Can Do Anything, performed by Keiko Utoku and Casey Rankin. Or if you live in America, Sonic Boom. Not that Sonic Boom, the other one. You get it. Anyway, both songs are a certified banger. You Can Do Anything is delightfully optimistic, being one of my favorite vocal tracks in the series. It's right up there with Dreams of an Absolution, Mirai, and Waking Up. Meanwhile, Sonic Boom displays Sonic's badass nature perfectly. These two were the first vocal tracks in this franchise, and this duality is pretty neat. I wouldn't have it any other way. The physics and mechanics are basically the same, but the overall level design and objectives are a little unconventional. The level design is pretty different from the other games since the levels are large and labyrinthian. It's the closest we've ever gotten to a classic Sonic Metroidvania. The fucking Tails Game Gear game doesn't count. If you play this game like the others, you might find the experience a little mid, but if you take things a little slow and maintain caution while exploring, it's a little more fun. Except in Wacky Workbench, that level can go fuck itself. I spent an hour trying to beat both acts with 50 rings, but I just fucking gave up afterwards. See, this is the first of a few Sonic games that messes around with the concept of time travel. There's a couple signposts scattered throughout the levels, each labeled past or future. In order to time travel, you just gotta touch a sign, find a nice spot to accelerate up to 88 miles per hour, and bam, you're seeing some serious shit. To get the good ending, you'll need to do two things. One, go into each first and second act's past to find Eggman's robot generator to prevent each area from being overrun with machinery in the future. I don't know if you need to destroy all the generators in the game, since after winning all the special stages, every future is a good one automatically, but I do both of these things during my playthroughs. For the most part, I thought the time travel spots were easy to find, but that's probably because I played this game quite a few times. That and half of the challenge is gone in Sonic Origins, since we now have the useful as all hell drop dash from Sonic Mania. And if you didn't like the time travel in the original, then I guess this kind of improves it. Speaking of new moves, this game introduces the Super Peel Out, essentially a faster spin dash that leaves you vulnerable to attacks. Originally, I thought it was a little useless, but it's really grown on me. It's a welcome addition to Sonic's moveset. And 2, reach the goal with 50 or more rings to enter a special stage. Special stages in this game are so much better than the Sonic 1 mazes of nausea. You control Sonic through this Super Mario Kart-ass arena, and Sonic automatically runs forward, so it's all just a matter of slowing him down, steering, and calculating jumps. The goal is to destroy every UFO in the vicinity, and they all give you rewards like rings, speed shoes, and extra time. Be careful not to touch the water, since that siphons your time pretty quickly. For the most part, I had a ton of fun with these, and they're all pretty easy. And hey, if you suck at them, just rack up a ton of coins beforehand so you can retry the special stages as much as you want. This feature kinda takes away part of the challenge, but whatever, I think it's neat anyway. Sonic doesn't gain Chaos Emeralds with these special stages, but rather Little Planet's mystical time stones, which is the reason why Eggman took over in the first place. It's weird how these stones are just never mentioned again, considering the amount of times the later games use time travel again, but it's either with Chaos Emeralds, which is weird, and the Time Eater, whose origins are never explained whatsoever. We're getting off topic. A couple last things to mention about these is that I really love the music and the backgrounds for these. I wish these were actual levels in the game we could run around in. And speaking of which, the presentation. This game still looks pretty good just like the others, but I get why some people wouldn't like it. The main trilogy's art style was very much the usual grounded environments with a hint of the fantastical, but all the levels in Sonic CD look like abstract mishmashes of colors and shapes. It really doesn't look like it's set in the same world as the other games. It's almost as if it takes place on another planet or something, I don't know. Yeah, I like the level themes for the most part. Obviously the style isn't as good as something like Sonic 3, but it helps make Little Planet feel like the wacky planetoid of time it is. It's also noteworthy that each area has 4 different variants, so the game's level count of 40 is technically multiplied into 140. The past, present, good and bad future variants each come with their own visuals and music, and that's really impressive. The past is a lot more natural and full of plants and animals. The present is normal, I guess. And then there's the post-apocalyptic industrial hellscapes of the bad futures, and the optimistic good futures that have a perfect harmony between plants and machines. The mood is further conveyed with the music. Naofumi Hataya and Masafumi Ogata blended together a handful of genres, mostly jazz, pop, hip-hop, techno, new jack swing, and bossa nova, and unlike its Sega Genesis counterparts, each track was in that crispy, clean CD quality, something the OST benefits from being on the Sega CD. With the past level music, they didn't use the usual CD quality that the other songs have, but rather something a little more sample-based to fit the Lost to Time vibe, which I think works really well. I should also probably mention that I really don't like the American soundtrack for this game. If you somehow didn't know, Sega gave this game a new soundtrack when the time came to localize it for the West. I don't think the American soundtrack is bad in any way. In fact, some of them have great atmosphere, but it's just not as iconic or funky as the Japanese OST. That is, if you exclude Stardust Speedway and that creepy-ass boss music. How the fuck do you go from this to this? Now, of course, it wouldn't be a Sonic game without new characters, and this one introduces Metal Sonic and Amy Rose. I already gave Sonic himself the spotlight earlier, so why not we do the same for Amy this time? Unfortunately, Amy is probably the most inconsistent character in the series. She started off as just Sonic but pink, then they modernized her perfectly in Sonic Adventure, and then of course everyone got flanderized in the 2010s, including Amy, and now it just feels like Sega doesn't know what to do with her. If you ask me, Amy was at her best during the Dreamcast / 4Kids era, but here she's just a damsel in distress, so whatever. Sorry to the 2 classic Amy fans out there, I guess. But Metal Sonic, on the other hand? Oh, now we're playing with portals. Metal Sonic is one of the best characters in the Sonic franchise, there's no discussion there. He's easily the best rival Sonic has ever had, since he's the antithesis of Sonic's entire being. Sonic is a free spirit, he's cocky and full of personality, he's very much on the side of nature. Meanwhile, Metal Sonic is programmed with the clear goal to exterminate Sonic. He's cold and soulless, he's sleek, metallic, and artificial. And the confrontation against him in Stardust Speedway is so incredibly iconic. There's a reason it's been referenced in every subsequent Metal appearance. It's easily the best boss in the whole game. Not exactly a high bar, but you get it. It's unique in the sense that instead of beating Metal Sonic to death or something, everybody's Super Sonic Racing, and we gotta keep our feet right off the ground. It needs a perfect run through the highway, and it can be pretty tough at times. And afterwards, he slams his head into the wall and we rescue Amy. Absolute cinema. Speaking of Metal, the last thing I want to talk about for this game is the last 2 areas, which are by far my favorite. And some of you might agree with me. To start off, I adore Stardust Stardust Speedway, and I'm definitely not alone in that. The level theme is the most unique in the entire game. The past is full of greenery just like the others, but it's unique due to the temples in the background with some pretty lights in the back, and the present has a lot more now that the whole area has been turned into a city, with the foreground looking like a mishmash of brass instruments, which is weird in retrospect, but it's cool. And of course, the good future tones down the technology, and the bad future ramps up the pollution. The mechanics introduced are also a little interesting, like these spring launchers and these little switches that change the collision of the ground and slopes. And who could forget about the abundance of springs, dash panels, and tunnels that make you just plow through this level. By this point, I already collected all 7 time stones, so no generator hunting anymore. And of course, all 4 songs are by far the best level music in the entire game. And the last area is Metallic Madness. It's essentially Scrap Brain Zone on steroids and Ava Unit 1 colors. It even has some of the same obstacles, but in my opinion, it's a lot better. Aesthetically, I still prefer Scrap Brain Zone, but musically and technically, Metallic Madness is a lot of fun. Some new things it has to offer are these basic Tetris-like obstacles, and the laser beams that make Sonic the same size as Eggman's penis. I don't really have much to say other than the 2 best tracks here are the past and bad future. The past is just the same old funkiness you'd expect, but the bad future really emphasizes the feeling of hopelessness and defeat if you fail to stop Eggman.
You can't do anything, so don't even try. Get some help. Don't do what Sonic does.
One incredibly basic final boss later, all of Eggman's machinery starts to go up in flames as Sonic carries Amy to safety. We cut to another beautifully animated cutscene to finish the game off, with Cosmic Eternity playing in the background, a song equally amazing to You Can Do Anything, except this one is a lot more dreamlike and ethereal in addition to hip and funky. If I had to pick one song to represent the CD/Saturn era's aesthetic, it would probably be, well, any TJ Davis song, let's be real, but second place would be Cosmic Eternity.
When you feel tight, look at yourself. Inside your heart, you will find no special place to align. When you feel right, look at yourself. Inside your mind, you see Cosmic Eternity.
And that was Sonic CD. I know my opinion hasn't really changed, and if you don't like the game, that's still fine, but this was mainly me explaining why I think it's neat. It's still a lot of fun, it's got a unique aesthetic, the best music in any classic Sonic game, an unorthodox but pretty fun gameplay loop, and it'll forever remain a misunderstood masterpiece in my eyes. Anyway, let's throw it on the tier list. This is gonna be really biased, but it's going in the A tier. Getting back to release order, up next is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Of course, since Sonic 1 was such a massive hit, the only logical thing to do next is to make the sequel bigger, better, and faster. Sonic 2 is the game to introduce a ton of iconic shit to the series, so it's pretty important. But while this game is definitely worth playing and discussing, it's not perfect, we'll get to that later. As mentioned before, I'm going to be using fan-made ports for Sonic 2 and 3, and for this one I'll be using Sonic 2 Absolute, made by the same devs as Sonic 1 Forever. It's more or less the same thing with tons of enhancements and bug fixes, 16:9 display, you get it. Now, let's stop wasting time and start the game. This isn't gonna take long, I beat it in one sitting. This game brings back the same level design philosophy from Sonic 1, specifically from the levels that actually worked. We're back to the momentum-based platforming, with the reward being traveling at Mach speeds, baby! And man, when I say Mach speeds, I mean Mach speeds. Some levels are beatable under a minute, which is a combination of me being good at them, while some levels just give you unearned speed like Chemical Plant. It's a little more forgivable here than in something like Sonic Colors or Forces, because this is a 2D side-scroller from the 90s and those were 3D platformers which had shorter levels than a game released in 2008. There's really no excuse there. Anyway, back to the unearned speed thing. That's probably the main reason why I think that this game, while still a lot of fun, isn't exactly the best game in the classic quadrology. To me, peak classic Sonic gameplay strikes the perfect balance of being a regular platformer and a Sonic platformer, if that makes any sense. And that's not to say that this game has some levels that strike the balance perfectly, it just seems to emphasize the speed a lot more. This can sometimes lead to accidentally running into an enemy at times, but then again, it's probably also just a result of this game having no real reason to keep your rings, at least to me. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't really give a fuck about the special stages in this game. But on the more positive side of things, immediately just by looking at Emerald Hill Zone, aka Green Hill clone, you can tell that the art direction took a massive step up. The colors are much more vibrant, there's tons of little details to appreciate, like the full field of flowers in the background and a better looking dirt texture. All of the levels look fantastic, most notably Chemical Plant's overall aesthetic, Casino Night Zone's beautiful black background with random colored pixels to emulate a bright nighttime city, Winged Fortress Zone's whole militaristic vibe, and Mystic Cave Zone. Need I say more on that one? Unfortunately, unlike Sonic 1 or CD, there's no theme that ties all the levels together. This is the first of many Sonic games that just does whatever the fuck it wants for the levels. And that works just fine. Hell, it's amazing in Sonic Heroes, but I don't know. I like a good theme. And of course, the music sounds fantastic. Nakamura-san is back for this one, and the music is a massive step up from the predecessor. Just compare the two side by side and you'll see which track has more sauce. It should also be noted that this game doesn't have 3 acts per level like the other 2 games we covered, instead cutting the number down to 2. I didn't really mind the 3-act structure all that much, but damn, the 2-act structure is a lot better. Speaking of, after 2 acts of Emerald Hill, we make it to the next level, Chemical Plant, aka the second most overused level in the entire series. But to be fair, this level is one of the more iconic ones from this game, so its revival in Generations is justified. There's just so many memorable moments here, tons of high-speed running sections broken up by little platforming bits, most notably the infamous pink water bit. I know everyone jokes about this part being anxiety-inducing, and man, what were they on? This shit's easy. The only parts I don't really vibe with are these pipes that automatically take you to the next area, since it's the only mechanic that takes control away from you, but it's only like 5 seconds long, so whatever. Now, I already mentioned it earlier, but Casino Night Zone is another fantastic level. Not only is it great visually, but mechanically, its whole gimmick is so smart, and it's such a no-brainer at this point. I mentioned before that Sonic has pinball physics, and that level doubles down on that, with the entire level basically being a giant pinball machine, flaps, bumpers, slot machines, and all. Sonic Team would go on to bring back pinball machines in a bunch of other Sonic games, turning it into a franchise tradition, but I think a lot of them missed the point since they can never get the physics right. But thankfully, it's not a problem in Casino Night Zone, so it stands out. This level is a little weird for me, but I kinda like Hilltop Zone. The music is a little too goofy, but it's good just like the rest, and I really like the obstacles this level offers, like the rising lava cave and the seesaws from Sonic 1's Starlight Zone returning here. I don't really have a lot to say about this one, and the same goes for Mystic Cave, except for the fact that this version of the game doesn't have the unused Hidden Palace Easter egg. Either that or it's just toggleable via the settings and I just missed it somehow. Or unless this is the wrong pit of death, I guess. I don't know. Well, at least Mystic Cave Zone is a lot better than Oil Ocean Zone. Anything's better than Oil Ocean Zone. The last true zone is Metropolis Zone, one of the most infamous levels in the entire franchise, and I can definitely see why. First of all, the level itself isn't as visually stunning as the others, and second of all, the enemies are really fucking awful in this level. I didn't mention the enemies at all in this video since they're fine for the most part, and at most you'll bump into them in Aquatic Ruin Zone or something, but Metropolis really fucks you over with these stupid starfish and mantis badniks. Look at how much I fucked up because of these guys. But on the more positive side, I think if you improve the enemies, then this level would be pretty decent. And I wouldn't have minded the fact that this is the only one that brings back the 3-act structure. There's some decent platforming here, cool obstacles, this bit where Sonic gains temporary access to the portal gun, and most notably, the music is great. Granted, it can be a little repetitive, but I think this fits as an optimistic tune to hype you up as you go through the last level before the end game. Now, before we talk about the end game, hey, look at that! Sonic 2 introduces a brand new character. Wow, I can't believe it's taken that long to say this. Say hello to Miles Tails Prower, one of my personal favorites. I seriously love Tails so much. You don't believe me? In my Knuckles animation, the Sonic Forces joke is literally me making fun of Tails' character assassination in that game. Tails as a character has always intrigued me. He's a super smart kid who makes cool gadgets that provide Sonic with some important intel at times, and when the moment calls for it, he can be a pretty inept fighter. But that aspect is more so a character arc in the Dreamcast era. I also love playing as him, even if I don't do it as often as Sonic. He can use his twin tails to fly around for a little bit, so he's basically the easy mode in the classics. His design is also the best it's been in this game. I love his stupid little borzoi ass snoot, his eye shape, the little bit of hair on the back. I always try to replicate these features whenever I draw Tails. I also like to think that Tails' canonical ethnicity is Japanese, since his shoes are meant to have the colors of the Japanese flag, and the entire reason why he's a fox is because he was designed to look like a kitsune from Japanese folklore. His friendship with Sonic is also directly based on Gohan and Piccolo's from Dragon Ball Z's Saiyan Saga, as confirmed by Tails' character designer. As both a Sonic fan and a Dragon Ball fan, I think this bit of info is really cool. And this is probably a nothing complaint, but this is why I really don't like the Sonic Origins opening for Sonic 2, implying Sonic and Tails were friends right off the bat. Because if we look back at Gohan and Piccolo, it was purely reluctant for Piccolo until he started to warm up to Gohan the more time they spent together. And that's a lot more compelling than just being friends right off the bat. I think Sonic should have probably been annoyed by Tails before deeming him noteworthy of being his little buddy. Sonic's allowed to be an asshole, you know? Now this complaint comes fully into play when I discuss the ending, so let's just move on for now. And yes, I do think Sonic should have grabbed Tails and thrown him against a fucking island. And also Sonic should be green. I wonder how that would look. Never mind, that doesn't look good at all. Up next is Sky Chase Zone, the start of another Sonic staple, those being tornado levels. In this level, Tails pilots Sonic's biplane through what's essentially an auto-scrolling level with nothing but a few enemies. So needless to say, it's not very remarkable. I've said it before, but I think the best tornado levels are the ones from Sonic Unleashed, since those are the most interactive. And before that, all we had was Dollar Store Mario 3 airship level and Star Fox at Home. But the best thing about this level is that it's short, so up next is Winged Fortress Zone. This level is weirdly enough one of my favorites. Just like Metropolis, it's pretty hard, but it feels a little more fair. It's all mainly platforming challenges, and the chickens are a massive upgrade from the mantis and starfish of Doom. Some mechanics might be a little hard to deal with on your first run, like these speed bumpers, but it's pretty rewarding once you beat the shitty boss at the end and hitch a ride into space. I also like this level's militaristic feel, like I said before. This was before Eggman became a lot more egotistical, and this big airship's design stands out for that reason. Up next is the Death Egg, which is definitely not the Death Star. Now, it isn't until Sonic 3 where the Death Egg became a fully fleshed out level, so here it's pretty much just a boss arena. Skipping over the first boss because it's pretty easy is one of the most iconic Eggman's robots in the franchise, the Death Egg Robot. I haven't really talked about the bosses much in this video since they're all kind of basic, but it is not the case here. The Death Egg Robot is one of my favorite bosses in the franchise. For one, the location is cool as hell. It's just a hangar bay sky and the Death Egg, but the background of space with Earth below looks pretty nice. The music also sounds really intimidating, perfectly fitting the climax to this adventure with an imposing march that's perfect for Eggman. And this boss, at least to me, is actually pretty fun to fight. It's insanely hard and you have access to no rings, so it's mostly a game of patience and figuring out when's the best time to hit him. His weak spot is right in front of him, but if you don't pull it off right, you risk hitting the spikes and starting all over again. He'll also shoot out his arms and try to flatten you by launching in the air, which is a nice obstacle. I always have sweaty palms when fighting this boss, and I feel especially accomplished when I deliver the finishing blow. Now, you know that weird tangent I made about Sonic and Tails' friendship during this point in the timeline? Yeah, you could argue that it doesn't matter because this game really has no story, but to me, personally, the reason why I think the Origins retcon is a little stupid and the reason why getting the Chaos Emeralds are pointless in this game is because of the ending. Here, Sonic falls down from space, and Tails' skills are paid off by him using the tornado to save Sonic's life. The somber music and the little images that pop up make this moment all the more special, and it's a perfect way to end this game. Try again? Yeah, I don't think so. And that was Sonic 2. Comparing it to Sonic 1, I definitely had a much better time. Sonic Team seemed to have a better idea of what makes this gameplay fun, and it's great to see them improve upon the first game, even if it wasn't perfect. The better visuals and music are very appreciated, the levels are fast, fun, and memorable, even after 30 plus years, and the endgame is really solid in my opinion. Out of all the classics, I think I played this one the most, which is probably why I find some parts easier than other people, but man, this game is just solid as hell. And I would be a fool to place it anywhere lower than the A tier. But while I think Sonic 2 is great, it still isn't the best one. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles is the best classic Sonic game. Moving on. Okay, it's not really that simple, is it? Now, Sonic 3, in my eyes, is the absolute masterpiece of the Genesis era. It makes all the other games look like shit. Well, not really, but you get it. Everything I've praised the other games for is present in Sonic 3, plus there's other things worth fawning over in this game. For this game, I'll be tackling Sonic 3 Angel Island Revisited, which has the same improvements as the others, but I'm actually going to be modding the game similar to the Unleashed video. And just like that video, the links are going to be in the description, as always. I really hope I don't get crucified for preferring the Sonic 1 sprite. The game immediately picks up right after Sonic 2's ending, and Sonic uses the Chaos Emeralds to go super. I don't know how he got them since I didn't collect them in the last game, but don't worry about it. Then all of a sudden, BAM! Uh-oh, you stupid hedgehog, you just got knuckled! We're introduced to Knuckles the Echidna as he bursts out of the ground to steal our Chaos Emeralds. So let's just give Knuckles the spotlight already, before we even talk about the gameplay. This is my video, fuck you all. Knuckles is the best character in the franchise. I fucking love Knuckles. I literally made an animation where all I do is suck his six-headed echidna cock for 5 minutes straight. I threw a temper tantrum when they released the Knuckles show and blue-balled the ever-loving crap out of us. Everything about Knuckles is so fucking cool. Much like Metal Sonic, Knuckles is Sonic's polar opposite, but in different ways. Sonic is all about speed, so Knuckles is all about strength. His gameplay makes great use of his fists, with him climbing up walls with his fist nipples, and in 3D games you can straight up beat the shit out of enemies. He can also glide in the air with his dreadlock quills, which is such a unique idea. Look at him glide around, he's so fucking cool. Sonic is a confident, free spirit who loves messing around with people, and in contrast, Knuckles is a stubborn, no-nonsense, somewhat antisocial warrior with a sworn duty to protect the Master Emerald, which is the only thing that can control the Chaos Emeralds. His design is also beautiful. I personally love when artists draw Knuckles bulkier and taller than Sonic, and you can never go wrong with giving him a big ass snoot. And also the cowboy hat, but that's optional most of the time. I said before that Tails is very much Asian coded, which makes him pretty unique, and Knuckles is the same except he's very much black coded. His shoes sport Rastafarian colors, his quills really are meant to resemble dreadlocks, and hell, he's even black in Sonic Adventure 2. It might not be intentional there, but who cares, he still looks really cool there. And while Sonic and Tails' friendship was based on Gohan and Piccolo's, Knuckles shares a lot of similarities to Piccolo, even if he wasn't confirmed to be an outright inspiration. Both of them are rivals turned allies, both of them have a unique set of powers that set them apart from the usual Hedgehog or Saiyan characters, and hell, Piccolo is also my favorite Dragon Ball character, go figure. Anyway, what were we talking about again? They finally peaked the formula with this game. Looking back on the others, you had one game that had the right idea but fumbled when it came to level design half of the time. A game that, while good on its own, could be a little overwhelming at times, and a game that's fun but feels a little too fast. Sonic 3 is amazing since it finally gets the balance right. There's some stinker levels in this game like Sandopolis Act 2, but for the most part they created a perfect harmony between speed and platforming. The levels are long and explorative like Sonic CD, but the level design feels a lot more seamless, which makes the exploration a lot more fun. This is truly a masterclass in level design, and exploration is encouraged since special stages are now within big old rings found throughout the levels as opposed to finding them at the end of the levels, and they're actually pretty fun. I know blue spheres aren't exactly the most popular special stage out there, but I hope some of you agree with me when I say that they are pretty fun. They can get challenging and even anxiety inducing later on, but they're a nice reaction test and I don't really mind doing it 14 times. Yes, 14 times. You have 14 Chaos Emeralds to collect now. Technically, in the first half, we get all 7 Chaos Emeralds, but in the second half, we upgrade them with the Master Emerald to become the Super Emeralds. This is because the game was chopped into half due to a fucking McDonald's promo, apparently. I don't know, I don't really care to look into it. I talked about Sonic's moves before, and Sonic 3 introduces the Insta-Shield done by pressing the jump button mid-air. Essentially, it enlarges Sonic's hitbox enough to defeat some enemies that are out of range or destroy enemies that are covered in spikes. It can be pretty useful at times, and with these fan-made ports with the drop dash, spin dash, peel out, and insta-shield all enabled, you gain access to a really cool moveset for Sonic, and it's all using just one button. The insta-shield is removed once you have the elemental shields, which is another awesome addition. Throughout the levels you can find special monitors that hold 3 types: Bubble, Flame, and Lightning. The Bubble shield lets you bounce around like a basketball, and you can use it to deflect certain projectiles and breathe underwater. The Flame shield rockets you forward, and using it on slopes and stuff can be pretty helpful to build up momentum. And the Lightning shield, aka the best one, allows you to double jump and draw in rings. These power-ups are a perfect addition to spice up the classic Sonic gameplay, and I'm glad their legacy lives on in the modern Sonic games, with Bubble turning into the bounce bracelet, Flame turning into the air dash, and Lightning turning into the double jump. And also you can draw in rings while boosting. Another thing this game excels in is the art direction. This game might just be the best looking classic Sonic game, period. Each area is super unique, making Angel Island feel truly alive. Angel Island Zone is a great starting point, and the whole island going up in flames is such a unique twist. Hydro City, my ass, it's pronounced Hydro City, is one of the best water levels in the series, having you run over the water like Jesus if you have enough speed built up. It's incredible. I don't really want to talk about every level since I'd be here all day, but it's all awesome. And so is the music. This one's a bit of a weird one, so stick with me. Most of the tracks are done by Jun Senoue, who would then go on to compose a handful of future games, but out of all people, Michael Jackson was hired to compose a handful of tracks, but he was caught doing some no-nos at the time, so he was terminated from the project. Ignoring all of that controversy, MJ's tracks are pretty good, but I do prefer the original prototype tracks by Jun Senoue. Thankfully, you can pick and choose whatever song you want in Sonic 3 Air, so I basically just picked one from each, but I chose to do all prototype music for Launch Base Zone because the MJ version just isn't doing it for me. One other thing I like is that this game is the first one to have a clear narrative. The other games, stories were basically an excuse for the game to happen, but all the characters in Sonic 3 are constantly scrambling around to achieve their own goals. Sonic and Tails are on their way to crack some Eggman as usual. Eggman wants to relaunch the Death Egg, and Knuckles is just an asshole, but his true intentions are revealed later. This is all done with environmental storytelling, cutscenes in between levels to interconnect the world, and so many standout moments. I already mentioned the island going up in flames, but then there's also the Marble Garden Zone boss fight where Tails carries you around in the air, the entirety of Launch Base Zone, and the Big Arms boss fight, which actually has an interesting attack pattern and cool music. It's a great way to end the first half of this game. Honestly, I wish this game wasn't split in two, since crashing the Death Egg again just for it to go back up to space during the finale is a little weird, but we have the Big Arms boss because of it, so who cares? Actually, that's another thing this game does pretty well. The bosses are easily the best they've ever been. They're still pretty simple, but some definitely stood out to me, like the Sandopolis ones, the Death Egg ones, Flying Battery, etc. Speaking of bosses, let's discuss this game's climax leading up to the final boss. If you thought the endgames to Sonic 1, 2, and CD were great, I mean they still are, but this game's climax is absolutely insane. One of the final areas is Lava Reef Zone. Act 1 is kind of unnoteworthy. It's not bad, but you kind of just look at it and go, damn, they weren't lying, that really is a lava reef zone. But Act 2 is pretty unique when it comes to visuals and music. The lava's all cooled off and the whole stage is covered in blue crystals. It looks really pretty. I'm glad I get to appreciate the scenery with Tails, but I wish we had at least one more person to join in. Oh my Guckles, it's fucking Knuckles! Glad to see Knuckles is taking notes from Chris Redfield here. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm not a fan of auto-scrolling levels, but this one is actually a really cool set piece before the boss. We're at the Death Egg's crash site, and with a flash of light, the peaceful crystal cave is once again a flaming pit of hell. The visuals are enough to make this exciting, especially that insane background. They even animated heat waves here, which is an amazing detail. But unfortunately, it doesn't last very long, and after another engaging boss fight, we make it to Hidden Palace Zone, the location of the Master Emerald, but more importantly, the location of our boss fight against Knuckles. The fight starts off the tradition of rival bosses. Metal Sonic doesn't count. And just like in Sonic Heroes and the Adventure duology, they feel less like boss fights and more like bar fights. Good thing we have the Insta-Shield though. And now we have the big reveal that Eggman teamed up with Knuckles to be a thorn on Sonic's side, but it was all a ruse so Eggman could steal the Master Emerald. This is what makes Knuckles realize that Sonic isn't as bad as Eggman made him out to be, so Knuckles is now our ally. If you know me, you know I love Team Sonic with all my heart, so revisiting the moment they became a team for the first time made me pretty happy. After being electrocuted, Knuckles is mostly out of commission, but he has enough strength to show Sonic and Tails the way to Sky Sanctuary Zone. I feel like a broken record saying this about Green Hill and Chemical Plant before it, but Sky Sanctuary is another really cool level, and it was brought back in Generations for a good reason. This is the point of the game where the story has reached its climax. The only thing that separates us from the Death Egg are these floating ruins overrun by egg robos and teleporters, and occasionally Mecha Sonic shows up for a quick boss fight. I think the Mecha Sonic fights in this level are pretty cool, and I like how they call back to Sonic 1 and 2, and this feature is just a Sonic 3 Air exclusive, but I like that you have the option to have the boss music from their respective games play. Once the proper Mecha Sonic boss is done, you'll notice he's not quite dead yet, and that's because he's the main antagonist of Knuckles' campaign, which takes place after Sonic's, and it's essentially Knuckles on cleanup duty. But back to Sonic's story, up next is the Death Egg. Like I said before, we only got to see a couple of rooms from this space station in Sonic 2, but now it's one of the best final levels in Sonic history. Right off the bat, that background is gorgeous, and it kind of resembles the Death Star's interior from Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi. I wonder why. The music is also incredibly appropriate for this scenario. It's like it's begging us to keep going deeper into Eggman's clutches to save the world. And it does have some interesting mechanics that play around with electricity, a primitive form of light speed dashing, and these anti-gravity switching bits. I also really like the elevator boss fight, and the Act 2 one is pretty interesting too. And afterwards, Eggman hops onto another Death Egg robot to finish us off, and this one is much bigger, using the Master Emerald to dish out Kamehamehas at us. This boss was pretty challenging at first, but once you get the pattern down, you can down him in like 30 seconds. At this point, if you don't get all the emeralds, this would be the end of the game, but it just so happens that this game birthed the tradition of supersonic boss fights, starting at the Doomsday Zone. Unfortunately, supersonic boss fights don't really do anything interesting mechanically until Sonic Frontiers. They're very much operating on the rule of cool. And yeah, this one is pretty cool. Flying out in space, we need to collect rings and navigate through an asteroid field so we can catch up to Eggman, and they do this little portion that has you trick these missiles to destroying Eggman's robot in addition to your left thumb. And just like that, we beat Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Sonic takes the Master Emerald back, and all is well in Angel Island. I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is one of the best games in the entire franchise. This was back when this franchise wasn't afraid to try new things. It wasn't afraid to be fresh and exciting while keeping the fun factor from what came before it. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is just the best in every category. Best level design, best new mechanics, best new character, best boss fights, best environmental storytelling. I could go on, but I think the point has been made. And while I didn't get to the optional content like the bonus stages, those are also a lot of fun, and it just makes the game feel all the more passionate. Calling this game a masterpiece would just be underselling it. I love this game to death. And as for the tier list, it's gonna be the first game in this series to make it to S tier. Now, from then on, Sonic would go on to star in more 3D adventures, and that's what we'll be covering next time we take a look at this series. As good as they were doing, it feels like Sega eventually lost the plot, delivering the absolute worst 10 years of this franchise, the dreaded Meta era, and I've talked about it plenty of times before. It straight up sucked to be a Sonic fan during this time. However, there was one diamond in the rough, one glimmer of hope for the future of Sonic. In the midst of absolute garbage like Sonic Lost World and Forces, Sonic would also go back to his roots with the critically acclaimed hit, Sonic Mania. Whoa, hey! Before we get to that, this video is really long, so stay tuned for part 2, I guess. Oh, and also subscribe and hit the notif bell, and follow me on Newgrounds and Blue Sky to keep up with all my other stuff. And you can also become a channel member or a patron to see videos early, as well as getting to see your name on the end screen. Stay tuned for part 2, I guess.